Laura Lady, you're here? Not sure if where
Here,
Laura
yes,
is.
I'm
Where are
here.
you? Where are you right now?
I'm in Mexico. I'm in my car.
In the car. Okay. Thanks for joining as well. I don't know if you
My
heard,
pleasure.
with everything going on, that's why we even started this founder forum because of the global opportunities, but also the challenges that we're having.
Yep.
And you're one of the most global people that I know. So I think if you're interested, maybe the next time we do this, you could, be our special guest if you're open to that. Eric's here. Hey, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thanks for coming on.
I'm one of those. I'm on both sides of the fence here because my product's made in the USA, the majority of my products, and so I'm like, 500% tariff because I've got hundreds of knockoffs, and so they're killing me. But I also do order products, and I myself have a container sitting at the port over in China, so I get it.
Yeah. What is it? Maybe we could go around because we're going to just have to delay kickoff. If we want to just go through and everybody can introduce themselves that's on here today. Eric, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Eric Diedrichsen. I got two businesses. One of them is Volume 11, in which we design and build trade show exhibits. When that business shut down during COVID, I invented a new chicken feeder and a new chicken waterer. And that company is called Riverbend Resources. It was recently on Shark Tank, and that's kind of blown up a little bit. So I'm based here out of the Boston area and looking to go global.
That's awesome. Welcome, Eric. You're from Boston as well, right? Boston area.
Yes, sir.
Glad you were able to make it here. How'd you find out about the Global Founder Forum?
I think I saw it in the pals.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm from Canton, the South Shore, from Boston originally.
I can hear it. Your accent just kicked up a little bit there.
Yeah, I bring it out when I can.
Yeah, you should get them in a room of full Bostonians and
Yeah, it's wicked awesome to have you here. And you did a deal with Damon, right?
Yes, sir.
That's awesome. I just saw Damon speak actually in North Carolina. And he did a great job,
Now, how did that happen?
Well, I heard about I was at an event in LA and someone said, there's the biannual, like biggest furniture show in the world happening. And I'm in the furniture business with my shelving. So I'm like, I booked a flight out there and then I saw that Damon was one of the speakers.
Did you meet him?
So, I didn't get to meet him. He had to be, he wasn't on our panel when we pitched, and then you had to be special VIP in order to meet him. But he did do a meet and greet after. But I got to meet a lot of other cool people. In fact, I got to meet people that were there from the Philippines for the first time in front of me. And that actually turned out to be a really significant meet and make the whole trip worthwhile, along with a number of other people that I got the opportunity to meet there in North Carolina. So
now, what was the product that you pitched on the show, John?
So we pitched a tandem boogie board was our original one, and then we got an update as we rebranded it Tandem Surf, and we did a deal with two sharks with Robert and Daniel Levetsky, and yeah, so we're 5 years in on that business. We're just a startup when we first got on.
And it's doing well, the Tandem Surf and all that.
Yeah, it's doing. I mean, we're at that point now where with our co-branded product line, it's the best opportunity for us now to scale. Yeah, because now we're able to get conversations with big box and basically where Jimmy Buffett started that from a song, and so because of our Shark Tank exposure, the president of Margaritaville reached out to us about creating products. So yeah, that's been the big win at this point. So besides Eric, who else have we got in here? We've got I know we had about 12 people. Zach or Zachary?
Yeah, happy to jump in. John, we met, how I learned about this is we met at the Grow LA dinner last week that I hosted. And I know you and I have been chatting a little bit on LinkedIn about what's the movie that you had? down by the river. What's the I
Oh, Tommy Boy?
Tommy Boy. We were chatting about that and all the deals and stuff that we were making. So it's a pleasure to meet you. I am not a founder of a CPG brand, but I work with a ton on a regular basis. My background comes more from the sports side of things. Former college football player. I've worked at CBS Sports Digital. I've done freelance for ESPN and a couple other different major stops there. But eventually made my way into the performance marketing space where I was a founder of an agency called Compass Digital, where we worked with more of, I would say, startup to maybe $25 million brands in the CPG space, as well as what I like to call the home and leisure space. So anything about, lead generation, that could be flooring, windows and doors, anything, outdoor, hot tub, pools, any saunas, any of those types of products. And then I have recently moved to Modify, which is a performance marketing and creative agency that really specializes in the CPG space of not only moving online products, but also we are one of the few agencies that I think has cracked the code when it comes to driving retail sales. We have some really cool proprietary AI products that help us drive that performance and ultimately trying to connect with as many, founders and business owners like yourself to help them navigate, ultimately those treacherous marketing waters that we have right now, as well as not many people are big fans of agencies, so I like to change that mantra as much as I can. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, welcome. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah, and yeah, appreciate you joining us. We did meet up in LA at Grow LA, and then and actually the first time we had one of these get-togethers, Jeffrey Stratton, or J. Scott Stratton, is actually joining us. Why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Hello, everybody. I'm, as John said, Jeffrey Scott Stratton. Friends call me Jay, so I extend that to everyone here. I am also in Zachary's boat. I am not a founder, and I work in the agency world. I am a partner at a leading content marketing agency here in Copenhagen, where I'm based. But I am American. I'm from Seattle, but I've been living over here in Denmark for 17 years. So I've been through several administrations and seen the ups and downs. And I think, that's how John and I connected. We go way back, like 2 weeks. We found each other on LinkedIn because I was quite interested in just trying to lend my expertise to small to medium-sized businesses in the U.S. because this is just a unprecedented situation. I come from a long 15 plus year history in advertising and content marketing, starting from a lowly copywriter and working my way up to partner of the agency. So yeah, it's just been a pretty crazy thing to see from the other side, and I wanted to lend my expertise on getting into the European market. There's a lot of opportunity over here. Obviously, lack of tariffs is one, at least coming from China. But the other is there's just there's 3 times as many people, but there's a difference in how you approach things. And then, John, he invited me today to kind of throw out some questions to Steven, because he's probably got the most experience here with doing the kind of European market with his brand. I personally have a pair of his shoes, so I know it well. So yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks to John for putting all this together.
Well, my pleasure. It's really cool that we can kind of create something together as a resource, and I know, we have more people that plan to be on here, and even if they can't, our plan is to record this session to make it available as a resource. So if there's anything that you have an NDA on or feel that shouldn't be public, you can let us know and we'll edit it out. That did happen the last time. We had some insight, so I want people to feel like they can freely share, and if you do, and there's something that shouldn't be archived or posted later, we can edit that out. I've got a global team now. I'm pretty fortunate because we manufacture in the US with modern shelving, as well as overseas. And then we have tandem surf, which is a little bit more of a challenge for us. And I believe my daughter Juju is on here as well. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, Juju, because we got a deal on Shark Tank with Daniel Levetsky and Robert Herjavec, and the products that we are marketing just aren't made here in the States at this time. It's inflatable, products for getting people together on the water. So Juju, you want to introduce yourself while we wait for Steven to come on?
Hi. I can turn on my camera real quick too. 1 second. Hello, I'm Juju. I'm part of the team at Tandem Surf. We founded the company. Oh wait, you can't see me. Okay, now you can see me. We founded Tandem Surf in 2020 during my freshman year of college at UC Berkeley, where I studied data science and business. And a couple of years ago now, I graduated and have been working on scaling Tandem Surf and launching our latest big thing, which is our licensing deal with Margaritaville, and expanding from just doing inflatable boards and paddle boards to now doing pool floats as well. And it's been really cool to be part of the Shark Tank community and getting to meet other founders. And I've learned so much over the past couple years of networking and hearing from other people's experiences and being able to apply it to our business. And so, that's what we like to do too, is share the wealth that is information. So yeah, thanks everyone for being on here.
Thanks, Juju. Yeah, appreciate you being here. So Juliet's actually based out of Brooklyn, New York. I'm in California, where we started. And as a family business, we had the opportunity to pitch Shark Tank, and that really was a big game changer for our family. In terms of our existing business, which is the modern shelving. This is a real photo from a customer space. I'm currently out in the field. Laura Lady is here as well. Oh wait, I see Steven is coming back on. Let's see.
Oops, turn on the video. Welcome to Crazy Town.
All right, Steven, thanks for coming back. And
And again, apologies. I will blame the administration.
We appreciate you being here. Yeah, we were just having a chance to go around and have everyone introduce themselves. We've got, we call this the Global Founder Forum. And last time after we met, actually, pretty soon after that, I had a chance to see you go live and talk directly. And that's kind of how we met for the first time. And then I see that you're in our Facebook group. So thank you so much, Steven, for being here. You're probably one of the people with the biggest exposure due to the current things happening in the marketplace.
You think 145% is the winner?
Yeah, it's good. So and we've got Jeff Stratton here, who has agreed to kind of help. He's actually a customer of yours.
I have a pair of your shoes. Yes.
Hey, me too.
So we asked him to kind of be the facilitator of this second Global Founder Forum. So thanks for being here.
Pleasure. Let's have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
do you want me to take over, John, or do you?
Yeah, why don't you take over, Jeffrey? Yeah, we were just kind of going through the intro, the different people. It's there's founders. There's some people that are interested in supporting founders, and with this whole challenge that we have, and for some of us, like I'm really inspired by you and what you're doing to go global with our companies. One's a Shark Tank company, one's a modern shelving company. So I'm very excited to have you here, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Again, pleasure. At least I say that now. It could change. I'm open.
So I kind of drafted up some questions for you, Steven, because I think that you have a valuable set of insights that could be useful to the group here today, partly because your brand is present in the European market and internationally. And I think that it would be good to get your insights and your expertise on what it means to break into Europe, how it's different from the US market. So I think the first question I have is just getting a little bit back into your history. You guys launched your Xero Shoes.eu in 2021, and then the UK version in 2023. Could you tell me why you made the decision to kind of, break into these markets separately rather than just going all in
Yeah,
on?
there's a little clarification. So let's just talk about breaking it all. From day one, we were getting demand from both locations. And in fact, our first distributor is someone who is in the UK. This is when we were a tiny little company. I mean, I think maybe a year, 2 years in tops. And he was a customer of ours, worked at IBM or Google or both of those, and thought it'd be a fun little hobby business, which it was for a number of years until we took it over, because by that point it was just too big for him to manage. So we did it in large part because obviously Brexit was a huge component of that, and having to deal with the different laws, both corporate and tax and everything else involved. It made sense. I mean, we had a wholly owned subsidiary that we set up in the EU, and then a sub of that subsidiary because of the situation that arose for where we were going to manage everything. And it's hard to remember all the conversations other than the tax consequences and GDPR issues and the vast differences between those two and those two groups in particular. I mean, there's obviously differences within the EU, but between the EU and the UK, it was just so great. We also realized that what was working for us in the EU was that we had a footprint there. We had people on the ground, and as we knew what our UK business could be, both a online and a wholesale business, we expected we were going to do the same thing there as well. And so employment laws were also a factor.
Okay. So if I can riff a little bit, looking at the EU thing, you mentioned that you had some feet on the ground. How did that come about?
Yeah, it was like most of the things in my business and arguably life, luck was a giant component, if not the entire component. We were at a trade show, and there was a gentleman who was there who was an American guy who'd been living in Czech for a number of years. He was a former salesperson for the Middle East for Skechers, and had a girlfriend and a daughter in Czech, so he was living in Prague. And he was consulting for a European company that was a similar product. I mean, well, it was kind of a run-worthy sock, kind of. Didn't really work. But he was working with them, and we just bumped into each other at a trade show. And we really hit it off. He really liked what we were doing and just said, look, here's my credentials. If you just had product on the ground for me, I could sell it. And so we decided to give that a whirl. And he was right. I mean, that business grew dramatically fast. I think within our first full year, we were somewhere around $12 million.
Okay. That's fantastic. So when in that kind of in that growth, did he handle all of the kind of logistics of breaking into? Did you go into Germany or Czech first? Did you go country by country?
Well, we were in Czech first, since that's where the office was. But the reality is that from the moment we started, we were doing everything we could with both what we had to do for localizing our site and dealing with all of the various rules, regulations, and laws for selling in every other country. We knew that Germany would be one of our most important countries. Czech, by the way, just for the fun of it, for people who don't know, and if any of you know, then you're crazy. 10 million people, 37 stores dedicated to minimalist footwear. So we knew there was a great opportunity there. If you walk around Prague, the number of people wearing all sorts of minimalist products is crazy. It's really delightful, is what it is. And we also knew that Germany had a long history with the same kind of product. So we knew those would be significant, and we approached them right away. But we are also just getting inbound demand. I mean, the reason that we've done almost everything has been inbound demand. So we're trying to get everything we need to do. I mean, filing all of our trademarks, setting up the website appropriately, handling payment and shipping and everything. I mean, just from day one, we were kind of hair on fire to make sure we could service things rather than have to say, yeah, we can't ship to you.
I mean, inbound demand is like something that I imagine every business is wanting.
Oh, so you think. I'll tell you, one of the things that's a pain in the butt about it is people just assume, because they can find you on the internet, that, yeah, it's easy to set up distribution here. I mean, it's easy to sell here. Why aren't you doing that? I mean, it's like there's this very weird thing where it's kind of like, this is going to sound weird. it's like when you bump into someone and you find out they're from your hometown or they went to your college, you feel this instant rapport. There's a similar thing where people just find you online. They assume you're right next door or it's easy for you to be so. And there's nothing I like less than A, telling people I can't take their money, and B, having to explain to them over and over and over and over and over why I can't take their money.
That makes sense. So, would you say, because of this inbound requests and stuff, would you attribute that to your personal authority as someone who has a bit of an experience as an athlete, a runner? Was it social media stuff? What would you attribute your success there?
I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy. It's all of the above and much more. I mean, the biggest thing that sells our product is the experience of our product. Over 40% of our orders are from existing customers. And out of the remaining 58%, a lot of them are from people who met those 42%.
Right.
And then, in the early days in particular, I put out a lot of content. I mean, there's two companies that dominate this whole category of natural movement. It's us and a UK company called Viva Barefoot. And so I've been an SEO guy for over 30 years, put it all together, and it's a combination of every bit of that. It is weird, I'll say this. It's weird that I'm saying this, and it's weird. I'm like the only recognizable face in this category. I literally can't go anywhere without being spotted. And so that definitely helps. It's the hair. I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like my wife and I were on Shark Tank. People will sometimes walk up to her as she's standing next to me and say, "Wasn't that guy on Shark Tank?" And she's like, "I was standing right next to him." But she's just your sort of generic, very attractive woman, and I'm a guy who looks like this.
Yeah. Having a distinct look is never a fail.
It's a weird thing having your hair be a brand.
Yeah. So I just want to jump onto Manya Clark's question here. So if you can see that, are you only selling through distributors outside of the US, or do they have
No,
DTC?
so again, our EU business is something that we own and we control. So some of that is direct, obviously, and some of that stuff that we're managing internally. But there are certain countries where it's just much easier to have a distributor. Although it used to be there were pan-European distributors, or at least sectional distributors. And now not so much. That's true in the US too. It used to be a distribution model fundamentally when you were getting into retail, and that's mostly disappeared. And it's been replaced, if anything, with sales reps and rep groups. But there are certain areas where distribution is still a thing. So we basically do what we need to do to get into that area effectively and profitably. So we have a couple distributors that we work with, but a lot of it we're doing with sales reps that we control. In fact, they were just here for a global sales meeting, and it was delightful. There were a number of them, European reps in particular, who got significant commission checks, and it was like, okay, this is for real. And so that was very exciting.
Very much so. Moving on to another question that kind of builds a little bit off of both of those things. In regards to the individual countries, I think I think it's a danger to kind of assume that Europe functions like the US, where
In every possible way.
right.
I mean,
So when you were kind of starting from Czech and moving on. Now, obviously, you had some pre-existing awareness that you've mentioned, but
yeah.
what kind of market research did you do going into each
We
country?
didn't really need to. By the time, I mean, in 2021, we were already a 12-year-old company, and we had been shipping to Europe. So we had
Okay.
data on who was buying from where. Now,
Mm.
where we were massively wrong were things like the products that were selling well here, would they still sell there, for example? I mean, I'll give a UK example that's a little better. We didn't have enough waterproof shoes for the UK. UK is
Yeah, that
much
makes sense.
wetter even than the Northwest.
Yeah.
So, the fact that we didn't have as many waterproof shoes, that was a problem. Our best-selling shoe here, not the best seller there because it's not waterproof. And similar thing with colorways or even entire styles. And we thought, even with our international sales manager living over there, we thought he had a pretty good insight into what the difference between the European and US markets were. But it's not that it was 50-50, but we were definitely wrong in a not insignificant way. We also, even though we did well, we didn't guess well or properly for demand. So the first couple of years were really trying to figure out what some of those differences are. And anyone who claims they can tell you is probably wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've got a follow-up question from John on that, and then I want to circle back to another follow-up from Manya, just because the one from John is kind of directly related to what you just said. So we're going to kind of skip around a little bit. And the one from John is kind of focused on what did you do to set up the websites, like versioning for different languages and stuff?
So the good thing about Czech is they are what's the word I'm looking for? Polyglots. So I mean, almost everyone in Czech speaks like 4 languages, and a lot of
Right.
people move to Prague from other places. So we were lucky in that we had native speakers of many other languages in our company, even some here. And so some of it was just putting it up, just part of it was just getting it up and just seeing what we could do. We know there are, decent number of English speakers. The next thing we did is I think we used some what were then rudimentary translation tools back then and had them edited by native speakers, which is a little tricky for us because there's so much, there's so much, not jargon, but there's so many things and ideas and phrases that are relevant to our industry that don't exist in other languages. So you have to find weird ways of referring to them. And so that means anyone translating or editing needs to know what those things mean in English well enough to find an appropriate translation. We haven't even done as much as we want to. And in fact, the site there is still using an older theme than we're using in the US, even though we developed it for the EU first. But just various things showed up and we had to deploy it on .com. And now we're going to be deploying it on .eu, and that will tweak some things as well. So suffice it to say, if I try to make it sound like things were well thought out, well planned, and were executed according to plan, I'd be lying.
Yeah. Would you from your experience say that it's very important to have a kind of
Yes.
regional dialect
Yes.
website? Yeah.
Undeniably.
Mm.
In the same way that, this is going to sound weird, I just did a call earlier today with someone who wears our shoes for sim racing. So it's, basically you're racing a virtual car in your home that feels like you're actually racing. And we're building out a landing page. And I said, here are the ideas that we want to communicate, but you need to write them because I have no idea what that world is. And if I try to write it, it's going to sound like a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about. So
Yeah.
it's the same thing with just with languages. I mean, you're dealing with, let's just use Germany. I mean, there's also dialects and things where people get twitchy and a little annoyed if you're not writing for them. So you kind of do the best you can. And I think everyone will give you a little bit of credit and slack for doing that. But ideally, I mean, you definitely have to do that. We started selling really well in France before we had even translated any pages into French. And so it's like, ooh, then that became like a mad rush to do that. And that made things work much better. It's absolutely necessary.
Right. Right. Great. Thank you for that. I just want to circle back to a follow-up question from Manya in regards to your DTC. So she asked if you have your own fulfillment centers and where do you ship from?
We're using a 3PL in the Czech Republic. We have in the US, we have our own warehouse that we manage. We like the control we have. It's fundamentally less expensive for us when we can do it. And we're not at a point where we can justify doing that in the EU yet. Again, I like the idea for a number of reasons, but right now we're using a 3PL. Same thing in the UK.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So that actually segues really good to the next question. This is kind of a multi-part one. And basically it's just if you could kind of break down the kind of essential infrastructure, like the physical, digital, logistical, and human resources that you have like on the ground in Europe in order to kind of make your expansion possible.
I would if I could really remember everybody. So we have an office in this delightful old building downtown in Prague that our international sales manager is there because again, that's where he and his girlfriend and daughter are living. We have a customer service team there. We have a blended customer service team. So both the US and the EU, they work together. They were separate for a while, but now they're all working together. And there are people who are managing the wholesale business there as well. And there are there's also, I think the sales manager is managing all the distributors and I can do it, the rep groups. It's Friday afternoon. The fact that I can think at all is just miraculous, let's be honest.
I get it.
So it's a relatively small team. I think it's somewhere around 10 to 12 people, which is because they're not having to do all of the marketing, we're handling a lot of that from here. If we take marketing out of the equation and we take managing the warehouse out of the equation, that's about the size that we were when we were that size. So frankly, the biggest challenge that we're running into is the same thing we ran into here, is as things grow, we need to find real estate. We need to find somewhere that can house all those people. And what's happened to us in America, and I'm positive it'll happen in Europe as well, is the moment we moved into a new space, it was already too small.
Yeah,
Again,
that
the
makes
perils of
complete
growth.
sense. I mean, you know, speaking from experience, I think the good thing about it is that, you know, once you're in Europe, you can be pretty much anywhere and ship freely from within Europe, right?
You can. Getting around is much, much easier than anything else, but there are places that are better, worse in various ways, and you've got to weigh those. I mean, again, the fact that Czech Republic is inexpensive to operate out of, and that people are educated and speak many languages is great. It's not ideal for when we're receiving inventory, for example, but so, you know, there are a lot of factors that you have to weigh based on what's important to you and what you're planning on outsourcing. If you're outsourcing customer service, for example, very different story. If you're outsourcing, or if you're insourcing accounting, very different story. So you really have to look at how you think your business is going to be structured. You'll probably find that it's going to be a little different than what you imagine. And then, you know, you can move. It's not rocket science to do that, especially when you're just starting in relatively small. The bigger things get, the more difficult that is, because people don't necessarily want to come with you.
Right. So digging into that a little bit and going back to what you said in the beginning, where when you first came into the Czech Republic, you kind of had a friend that you met at a trade show that kind of helped you establish things. Was that kind of like a partnership that then expanded into you having your own presence, or? Because
No,
I'm thinking about for businesses breaking in, obviously it's going to be difficult for some companies to just establish a foot without a partner, you know?
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to remember the sequence of things because I can't remember. I think we were already planning on getting into Europe before we met Dan. That's his name. And in fact, I'm positive we were, because we set up our first wholly owned subsidiary in Netherlands. And we wouldn't have done that if we had known that we were going to really set up our physical office in Czech. And we were doing that with our attorneys who have an international presence. So we had to set up all the various things one has to set up I mean, geez, just setting up a bank account was nightmarish. So in Czech, it was easier because we had him there to be helpful. But it was a little backwards. I mean, we stumbled upon Dan after we had already been planning to get there. And we also knew that the first couple of years were going to be, I don't know that we expected to have a loss, but we didn't expect it to be just, you know, blowing the doors down from day one, because we knew there'd be a very significant learning curve. We didn't anticipate how in many countries, just some of the legal logistical things were so challenging, and it wouldn't matter if we were there or not. You know, like one of the things about the US, very easy to set up a business entity. Not the same in some countries in the EU.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I wanted to ask you a question in relation to your kind of relationship with your suppliers. I did a little digging, and I came across an AMA that you had done a couple of years ago, where someone asked you about why don't you just manufacture all your stuff domestically. I think it was Colorado specifically. And you gave a very elegant, you know, explanation of how that's a dream scenario, but it's not, you know, realistically true. I think that, you know, obviously is at least the messaging that's going out politically right now.
You know, well, I'm going to interrupt and wonder about that, because the argument is that this is about bringing manufacturing, or one argument is that this is about bringing back manufacturing to the US, except that the other argument is that, oh, it's a negotiating ploy. Well, if it's a negotiating ploy, then you're not going to bring manufacturing back here. And if you're manufacturing back here, then you have no negotiating ploy. So it's a little bit insincere, I would contend. But more than that, there's, industry by industry things. So there's certain industries where where the original purpose of a tariff was to protect a local industry from cheaper competition, for example. And there's certain industries where that's actually a thing, and tariffs can be effective that way. And there's some where it's just not a thing. And one of the, backing up to problems of human psychology, like we all think things are simple if they're right in front of our face. We also think that if we can imagine it, it must be simple. For people who know it, my apologies. For people who don't, there's a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's just Dunning and Kruger discovered this little psychological glitch in our brain where often the less we know about something, the more confident we are about our position on that thing. And there's a big Dunning-Kruger thing going on with footwear. Footwear moved to Asia over 50 years ago, and it just, people think that it's simple. They can think that, oh, just manufacture here. People are willing to pay more. It's no big deal. The industry experts will tell you it's a $100 billion project that's going to take more than a decade if there was financial support for it. And the companies that would be able to benefit from it are the large companies and companies like ours. And we're not, tiny, but we're not, billion dollar plus. We wouldn't have access to a lot of that stuff anyway. So, I mean, the thing that I say when people ask me why we aren't manufacturing domestically, I say two things. One, it seems way simpler than it is. Experts say that it will take a long time, if it's even possible, because it's not just having factories, it's having people who know how to run those factories and having a supply chain that can bring the materials to those factories. And none of that is here. And it would take a long time to bring it back. But the other thing that I say is it's currently literally not possible to make our shoes. There's some shoes made in America, small amounts. It's literally not possible to make our shoes here. In the same way, it's literally not possible to have this conversation on a domestically made device. And I don't hear you bitching about your phone or your computer.
That makes sense. So going with that, train of thought, I mean, how has your relationship with your suppliers changed in relation?
It's really good. I mean, we've been very lucky, as I intimated before. In footwear, the footwear industry, they've seen companies come out of nowhere and really take off. So we were incredibly lucky that early on we had a manufacturing agent who decided to introduce us to their factories, and the factories decided, what the hell, we'll give it a whirl. And as we kept growing in those early years, like 50, 60% year over year, they got more committed to us. First the factories, then our agent, and the agent could then move us to better and better factories who, again, as they kept seeing our business grow, they became more committed to us. And again, it's a bit of a push me, pull you, better factories, more commitment, better factories, more commitment.
Yeah.
So they have been, during this time in particular, working with us very creatively, which we have to do to keep our business, because I mean, there was one factory when we did switch factories, they went out of business. I mean, we were their largest account, and they just weren't doing the kind of work that we needed. And so the factories we're working with now, even though we are not that big of a chunk, or well, we're a chunk of our business, but not the majority of their business, they know that if they can't help us in some way, they are losing not only that chunk of business, but the future relationship where we might have to go somewhere else. And so, it is simultaneously altruistic and narcissistic in the way that we're both pursuing the thing. Now, one thing is the writing has been on the wall for a while. So some of this is one of the weird things. People don't like to get into the details because it makes you have to think. So it's like, ooh, why don't you move to Vietnam? Well, you know that Vietnam factory is owned by a Chinese company that's actually owned by a Taiwanese company, and all the supply chain is still coming out of China. I mean, you know that, right? And they're like, what? I go, yeah, it's not what you think. And again, everyone hypersimplifies in their brain. Dunning-Kruger sounds easy. If I know nothing, the reality is it's very difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to jump to a question from one of the group here, from Hank. He wrote, have you filed a PTC or a patent cooperation treaty application?
Yes.
Okay. Very, very easy answer.
That's easy.
And then John wrote that you and Lena have built Xero Shoes together from the ground up. How have you managed to scale the fast-growing global company while also staying strong as a married couple and co-founders?
Um, wait, was that, you kind of cut out at the end. Was that a question of how we're still married?
I think that's what John was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really impressive, Stephen, that you as a couple got on Shark Tank, right?
Yeah.
You know, and you've been able to scale this globally. It's amazing because we got on as a family and our kids are involved, and you know, just hearing your you know, the last time we spoke, it was on one of your Facebook lives, and it was just so inspiring. So yeah, I'd
Wow.
love to hear some of that stuff that kind of has to do with like making this work the way
Sure.
you have.
Again, it is 100% luck. The lucky part being that while I was engaged to someone else, on the day that we were going to find a place to have a wedding, I met the person who is now my wife. And that was not what split up the original relationship. But I'll say it this way. Lane and I, we've been married for almost 22 years. We've been together for about 4 or 5 years before that. And I'm just about to be 63. So we met when I was, well, late 30s, early 40s. And that was a real advantage that we were not kids. So we already were psychologically relatively aware and were willing to work through whatever we had to work through in those early years. Luckily, I have no memory, so I don't remember that things were apparently somewhat challenging at the beginning. Lena can tell you that, but I have no idea what she's talking about. So, which I think is maybe something that's helpful. When we started the company, it was really kind of accidental. And I'm a really good product marketing person, and she's a really good finance operations person. We never hadn't worked together when we got together, but her history, she had started a mortgage company that she sold. I've been a marketing product person for my whole life. Even when I was doing stand-up comedy for a living, a lot of marketing in that, and I was doing some other things simultaneously. But so we knew that each of us was good in our respective things that were both needed for the company. And we just kind of, trusted each other and stayed out of the way. The reality is my job in the early years was to come up with these really cool ideas. Lena's job was to tell me we didn't have the money to do them. And my next job was to stop being a whiny bitch as fast as I could. So, and I'll never forget when she said to me one day, anything you want to test for $1,000 or less, you don't need my approval anymore. And it's like, oh my God, I love you so much. So, so it's been an ongoing thing, and I, I don't have a better answer other than, um, yeah, she's just, a really smart, wonderful, brilliant person, and and I've watched her go from being a smart business person to a brilliant business person. Um, the flip side is because she's like a good mm, operations and human resourcey kind of person, she does not necessarily have the same enjoyment of, who I am, because part of what she's had to do is manage me, or not really manage me, manage the effects of what I create. So I don't have an inside corporate voice. I treat everyone like they're friends of mine. That works well usually, but sometimes not so much. I was a stand-up comic for a living, so there's a very short wire between my brain and what comes out of my face. And sometimes someone's got to pick up, the pieces. I don't yell at people. I don't, call people names. I'm not crazy, but there's times where, someone's got to be in their bonnet about something that I either have done or they think I've done. And I would argue not is it's not required, but she tends to try to pick up the pieces. And so I have nothing but empathy for the fact that she's had to deal with me, which is why part of what's kept together. I'm not going anywhere because I don't know who else would put up with me.
Thanks for sharing, Stephen. That's really insightful. My wife is on this call as well, Manya. I met her back in 1989 and found out that she was making Band-Aids. She was in manufacturing and I was in marketing and sales. And I think that's really wonderful if you can find someone that you can build a business together.
Yeah, and we were a good couple before we became a business. In fact, wait, I'll tell you something it's actually not quite true. When we'd had a long distance thing for a little while, and when Lena moved in with me, she said, I've looked at what you're doing for a living, and now that I'm moving in with you, and I'm trying to figure out what I should be doing. And I've come to the conclusion that I shouldn't get a job because if I did, I wouldn't have enough energy for this relationship. Instead, you should pay me X amount of dollars to manage everything you're doing. When I started breathing again 2 weeks later, it took me literally 2 weeks to go, why is that such an upsetting thought to me? And I had to really probe that one. And literally, it took me 2 weeks where, she went to bed before me. I'm sitting there going, what's going on? I mean, why am I so upset? And I realized that I had this idea way in the back of my brain that I had never articulated. It had never come up as a clear thought, which was the person I'm going to be with, we'd basically be on sort of equal financial footing, and we'd sort of share some things and then have our own things independently, and away we go. And on top of that thought, or right after, I realized I got that idea because I watched my parents where things were very unequal, so I thought. And then I realized, yeah, but they never complained about it. I mean, they bitch and moan, but they never broke up. I mean, that was just the way it was. And the next thought was, there's an infinite number of ways of handling finances as a couple. And then my next thought, I shared with Lena, I said, I think you had a great idea. I think you asked for half as much money as you should be getting. And so that's what we did for a while. I mean, I haven't seen a checkbook in 24 years. So, I mean, we don't have checkbooks anymore, but I know we have money somewhere. If anything goes wrong, I'll hear about it, or it'll be screamingly obvious. But that was like the beginning. And I would argue that just that little kind of vignette says a lot about just the way we are together. And that led to us being able to, have this business and I would say make our relationship stronger, if anything else.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, I have no secrets.
Yeah, thank you for those, personal insights. That's always helpful to see how like the internal workings go.
Wait, I'm gonna get one other part for couples who are
Yeah.
together. Go find a therapist trained by John Gottman from the University of Washington, because this is something we ended up doing almost accidentally for a completely different reason, not because we were having problems in our relationship, but it's a very practical approach to dealing with whatever's going on in any relationship that can be incredibly effective very, very quickly. It's not digging into your past, although things might come up. It's based on tons of research, and a good Gottman, good Gottman trained therapist can be very helpful, because a lot of the conflicts that people have are actually, the way I frame it, as conflicts between these agreements that we have, either overt agreements, like we've agreed we're monogamous, or covert agreements, we never talked about it, but we assumed we're going to be monogamous, and maybe you had a different assumption, or agreements we didn't even know we had, that's merely just how we expect the universe to be, or how our life is supposed to be, and we never even thought about it ourselves until we find ourselves upset about something that is arbitrary, or could be, I mean, there's no value to it, plus or minus, and here we are reacting to it. I call that kind of a hidden agreement. And the Gottman stuff is really like, when Lena and I were seeing this therapist for a few sessions, I always thought that one reason we were a good couple is when we were upset, we had the same coping mechanism where we'd separate and kind of figure it out on our own. And when one of us could figure something out and could come back with clarity, that would be the movement. I didn't know that she actually found that separation terrifying. And I had no idea for, a good 20 years of our relationship. And it came up in a very simple way that, I mean, changed my life immediately. Like, if we're upset, I'll check in with her every half hour and go, not over it yet, not ready to talk. Just want to let you know I haven't gone anywhere. Or if I'm going to go somewhere, I'll check in. I'm going to go take a walk. I'll be back in an hour. And just that little bit, made a huge difference. And those things are the kind of thing that show up when you're dealing with business stuff, and you've got different opinions about something, for example.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think, I think anybody here who, as a business owner, knows that you have to kind of master the art of conflict resolution.
You have to master the art. You have to master the art of being willing to understand someone else's position.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, because once you do that, there is no conflict. You might disagree, but if you can see it where it seems like, if I had the life that you had and believed the things you believed, everything you just described makes complete sense. And at that point, there is no conflict. There's just, you're on the same page, and that's it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to some of the questions that came in while we were talking. So
I'll be
I'll
faster.
start with Hank first because that actually referenced an earlier one.
Yeah, and Jeff,
So were there
Jeff,
any?
I thought we could introduce Hank too as well. Let's take a moment
Sure.
just to say who Hank is.
Who
I'm not
is-
sure if Hank's able to put on he's actually another Shark Tanker
Oh,
from Nature's Wildberry.
oh.
Hank, are you able to just do a quick intro of yourself? Or I'd love to for people to hear. So I've gotten to know Hank from our Shark Tank community. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you. I can't hear
Yeah,
everything.
okay. Yeah, okay. So I just want to make sure. So he's got Nature's Wildberry. And Hank's question here is, are there any lessons you've learned from filing PCT? Would you have done anything differently? I don't want to step over to you, Jeff, but I wanted to just make sure people are on, that we have a moment to see who's on here as well. Thank you, Jeff.
It's going to be a really easy answer. Not really, because that's not my part of the business, so I didn't have to really deal with it. That was one of those, hey, we got to do this, so we did. And then I watched it happen and paid the bill. I didn't even pay the bill. We have people who do that.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess it'd be kind of hard to have your fingers in every single aspect of the company and understand that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I will say this, though, about patents. We've spent a lot of money on patents, way more than I ever, and anything related to patents, way more than I ever imagined. And part of it is because we've had, like, one of our early Chinese manufacturers patented one of our products. And so we've learned, I mean, the different patent law in China, it was very important to learn. So now whenever we have a new product, we do a design patent, or sometimes utility, depending on what we're doing, before the product is ever seen by the public. And typically before that we've even shown it to them, we've even sent tech specs to the manufacturer, just because first one out wins. And so we were able to get those patents back from the manufacturer who patented our existing product, because we had already been showing it publicly and selling it publicly before that. Related to that, like, we don't own xeroshoes.com.au in Australia, because their policy is first come, first serve, and they don't care if you have a trademark. And so there's someone who's squatting on it and wants $50,000 for the domain. It's like, it's not going to happen. So being aware of IP law in places that there's certain patents in certain domains we didn't get, because we never imagined we'd be in those places when we were just getting started. Right after Shark Tank, people were registering Xero Shoes domains all around the world. And we were able to get most of them back with just a letter that we had the trademark in that place. And it was lucky we had the trademark, because even that was just anticipating an unimaginable future of, where the company was going. And it cost us money that we were totally anxious about spending, but turned out to be some of the best money we spent.
Yeah. I think I see that quite a lot. Just having worked with a lot of international brands from over here, that the name, domain, or even actually company name there's a slight pivot or an iteration when it hits Europe, simply because there's something that's pre-existing or
I won't get into the very long story about the trademark office in our offices in the EU, and how decisions about infringement or even the ability to get a mark are made by people who don't understand either business or psychology or linguistics, which is problematic. The short version is that there's a company that's Xero that tried to have one of our trademarks invalidated. And I tried to explain, because I have a background in cognitive psychology and linguistics, how Xero and Xero are completely different, because the first letters are different, and Xero is a word and Xero is not. In America, that argument would have gotten their petition thrown out immediately. In Europe, we lost our mark for a while, because this 75% of it is the same. I went, right, but there's a thing called first letter primacy, where when people see something unusual in the first letter, it's clearly different in their brain. And they went, we don't know what that means. It's like, I just explained it to you, and here's a world famous psychologist who agrees with me. And they went, we don't care.
I think one thing to remember is, in a large part in European countries, they don't have lobbyists like they do in the US. So legislation is much more hardcore. A perfect example of that is, the Disney film Moana.
Yeah.
Over here in Europe, it's Vienna, because there is a Spanish something or other that had patented the name Moana for something. And they were strong enough to be able to push Disney around. So that
Good.
just kind of goes to show you that, even the big fish can't really
Well, it was
get
sort of
around
like
those laws.
whoever made the car that in America they called it the Nova, and then they tried to bring it to
Yeah.
Spanish-speaking countries, which for people that don't know, that means doesn't go.
Yeah.
So not a good name for a car.
Yeah. I want to move on to a series of questions, a couple of them from myself, but first, actually, Zachary had a question which segues into it perfectly. So he asked, what are the biggest hurdles you see from a marketing perspective to scale country to country?
You mind if I just interrupt for a second? I wanted to ask Steven a question. So
Yes.
when
Yeah, no
you
problem.
went over to Europe and you, like you said, you got all these different trademarks and domains and stuff. Like, I mean, did you do xeroshua.de or is xeroshoes.de?
It's a really good question. I've done for the marks, we just did Xero Shoes. Although I think I don't remember if we did another mark, but we pretty much just did shoes because that is who we are. We don't have a different name in other
But
countries.
I guess like if someone in
I know, I
Germany,
get it.
when they do zero, I mean, they can go to xeroshoes.com just the
Well,
same, right? Or do you
well,
need the
the difference,
.de so they
so
understand?
the difference is whether we're going to get the mark or we're going to get the domain. So there's a lot of times where we'll get either misspellings or language specific spellings of domain and have them redirect to Xero Shoes dot fill in the blank. So because the trademark is for Xero Shoes, we're going to get that mark. We're not going to get a mark because you can't get a mark if you're not using that name in trade. So, but you can just get the domain and then redirect that domain to wherever you want.
Yeah.
Nice.
The other thing to remember is that all the European countries have their own designated, like .de, .dk
Right.
and actually there's quite a lot of national pride that goes
Yeah.
into that because those are like officially registered by the state. So
Mhm.
you like if I've had a .dk URL before, and you have to go through a special registration with the Danish government in order to get that. So I think there's also kind of legitimacy.
Yeah.
So I don't think people are opposed to .coms,
You-
but there is something to say, oh, this is an official
We have,
thing
well,
when they
there's
see
also in some countries, there'll be a .com or like a .com DK. I'm not saying that's the one, but there'll be multiple versions and some are for sort of generic and some are corporate. And so, I mean, our domain portfolio is like I don't know, about 400 or 500 because we're getting like all those variations that we think we might need. It's again, one of those expenses we never thought would be on the balance sheet.
Yep. So just to circle back, there was that question from Zachary, like talking about your biggest hurdles that you saw from a marketing perspective as you went scaling from country to country,
Um,
aside from language. You mentioned that earlier.
it's just it's the simplest way I can put it is certain types of advertising, certain formulas, if you will, work differently or not at all in different places. And I'm thinking of a story about a friend of mine who went to Mexico and he came back and he said, all the billboards are using advertising methodology that we've used in the 70s that no longer works here. And so there's variations on that. There are some countries, I mean, Americans, look, you can tell from me, I'm about as American as you can get. We have a certain kind of brash, arrogant, something in your face flavor. And a lot of the ads in America are like that too.
Absolutely.
And, you can't do that in some countries, like, I mean, Nordic countries, forget it. So the kind of finding what works, and then there's the other complication for us where even the what works here doesn't work for us because we can't, because basically almost every ad, certainly in the US, I don't know if I can't say this is true everywhere. So I'll just talk about the US and you can extrapolate and tell me your version. Every ad is fundamentally, we have a better solution to a problem you already know that you have. Or if you're going to extend that, it's like, here's some annoying thing about your life. It's because of this thing. And we have a better version that will help you have a better life. And that's a particular format that is very capitalistic. It's very imagining, I'm going to be happy if I have enough money to fill in the blank. We can't do that because we can't just say, hey, we're better, because people say, but where's the arch support, the motion control, the padding, and all those things that for 50 years, big shoe companies have convinced me that I need. And you can't just say, well, they're wrong. So we have to do this very weird thing that, frankly, I think I'm the only person who's an actual like direct marketer who's figured out how to do this. where I have to get people into a state of cognitive dissonance. I have to get them to realize that what they know is very different than what they've been led to believe. So if I say something as simple as, I hold up a shoe, a typical shoe, and I go, is that the shape of your foot? And they go, that pointy toe box, and they go, no. I go, cool. What problems might you have at the end of the day when you've shoved a foot-shaped thing called your foot into a non-foot-shaped thing called that shoe that you're wearing? And then they tell me all these problems they have that they never realized were from the shoe that they're wearing. Or I say, which is better, weaker or stronger? And they go, stronger? I go, it's not a trick question. I go, so if you're going to make your arm weaker, what do? They go, don't use it? I go, yeah, if I put your arm in a cast, 8 weeks later, it doesn't come out stronger, right? They go, no, it comes out all atrophied. Cool, because you've immobilized a joint. You have 33 joints and 110 muscles, ligaments, and tendons in your foot. If you have a shoe that doesn't let your foot move, what's happening to the strength of your foot? And people go, oh. And suddenly they realize that this thing that they've been buying for 50 years is the thing that's causing their problem. So, but that's a weird little cognitive roller coaster I kind of have to take people on. And that works in some places better than others. Some places you can do, this thing's great. Or you can do, don't you want to be like this guy or this woman? He's wearing and she's wearing this shoe. You can be just like them. That can work in some places. So finding those weird little country or region specific things that are best practices and trying to find if those work and then finding out how to break out of those. Because by the time something is a best practice, it's already overused. It's already moving on to something else, but most people don't know it yet. So, so in essence, really, here's a weird way I'll put it. Imagine if you're not in America and you come to America and you're trying to figure out how to sell whatever you want to sell. You've got to understand some of those little colloquial things, those idioms, those things, just so that back to the thing with sim racing, people have to feel like you know who they are. And whether you figure it out yourself or you're working with people who do, it's tricky. And again, in Europe, you got to do that about 20 different times.
Yeah.
And if I do a quick follow-up on that?
Yeah, of course.
So just to throw this out there, because I totally agree with you. Like even in the US, you have so many little nuances of how you want to market, and there's just different pockets of places. So just taking because you're like US, there's a different way to market here than in Europe, and obviously they have their different pockets in the way that you want to market. Would you like looking back now? And somebody that's obviously trying to break in there that feels like they have their marketing dialed in the US, what would you recommend to them, like blueprint wise? And you don't have to go like on a 10 country thing, but just, hey, these environments or these countries or these regions are more similar to the US. So,
I wouldn't do that.
you're,
I
go
wouldn't do it
ahead.
that way.
Okay.
What I would do, see, again, I'll say it this way. Most things that most people are selling are, in fact, the argument is it's a better version of something you already know. So I would say, look, if you do a search for whatever you sell and there's no one showing up in the search results, then you probably have a product that isn't going to sell because you have no competition. People aren't aware of what you're doing. It's going to be a heavy lift. In the same way, the easiest way to make money, I don't know what I'm saying about that. The easiest way to start advertising is find out what your best competitors are doing and just do the closest thing to copying that you can do without infringing on them. And just see, figure out what that is. That'll be your baseline. If you can, this is sometimes true, but not always. So I'll say it as if it's on the often true. If and I will use Facebook as an example. If you look at another company, you can actually find all the ads that they're running, and it'll show you how long they've been running. And if someone's been running an ad for a year, or even typically over 3 months, you can work on the assumption, not always true, that they're doing that because the ad is making money. And so I hate saying it this way, but do the closest thing to ripping it off that you can to see if in fact it works for you. Because it might be that they're doing it and they aren't making money. They're trying to do it for some other reason. I mean, I know companies where they're trying to sell the company and they just need to prove they can get traffic. Doesn't mean it converts. They can just prove it gets traffic because that's what the buyer wants to see. So that's why, this technique doesn't work all the time. But if you see a preponderance of your competitors doing something similar, good shot that it's probably working. And then finding your little tweak on that is going to be the first step to take. And now there's another variation for me. I'll give you this one. like if I'm going to hire a copywriter, I'll say to them, here's a quick test. I need 5 headlines for an AdWords ad, for a Google ad. I'll give you the first one. These are the greatest shoes I've ever worn. You can now give me 4 more. If they don't come back with at least 1, and preferably 2, with some version of like, my wife said she'd leave me if I wore these shoes, I can't hire them. So when I find that best practices thing, the first thing I want to do is find a way to break that mold completely and pattern interrupt people so that they're not seeing what's familiar, because then you're competing with everybody, but they're seeing something that stands out enough that makes you feel different. And then you can do the same thing that the other people are doing because you've gotten their attention in a way that is engaging. So that's the way I would do it. It's like, I'd see I mean, if I had a product where it's kind of a commodity-ish, I'd see how everyone else is doing it. I'd find out maybe the other thing I do is if I could find someone who is reading it, if there's any forums or any groups or wherever people are talking about stuff, I'd see what people are complaining about, and I'd write ads based on that. So I wouldn't try. And this is what I would do if I was just as an American advertiser. It's no different. So the fundamental principles of marketing are consistent. I mean, you're basically selling an idea of a happier life, but different groups of people have opinions about how you talk about a happier life. Finns don't give a shit. You know, that's not their mentality, is not about how do I have a happier life. I mean, until you get them in their house and they have a drink. But you know, Italians, I mean, we know the stereotypes, and the stereotypes are not true for everyone, but they're not true as a group. And so, you know, you have to find those. And like you said, it's different in different parts of America as well. So it's the same idea everywhere. That was really overly verbose, but I hope that made sense.
Super helpful. Thank you.
If I can build on that a little bit, I think, you know, I agree with what both of you guys are saying wholeheartedly. I think if I can, you know, dig at the essence of that, is that market research is like absolutely essential. You know, what you were saying, Stephen, with the, you know, the kind of digital research you can do with ads tracking and who's doing that. I would imagine that can be quite difficult when you're doing it from country to country, because, you know, those kind of things are usually can have very specific language things that you'll need to dive into. So you might need to have somebody locally,
Absolutely.
particularly as you move southern in Europe. Now, northern Europe
Absolutely.
is everyone. You know, my wife's grandmother is 76, and I speak English with her every day. So it's, you know, but as you move further down in Europe, the you know, fluency in English
Well,
dissipates.
and further east as well.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that, you know, getting into those, looking at like also cultural nuances. What are the, you know, for instance, tandem surf would be an amazing, you know, market fit for somewhere like Spain, French Riviera, somewhere like that. Maybe not so great in Norway, you know. So I mean, there's some obvious cultural things that you know, you might want to look into. But it would be the same if you were trying to sell a summer product in Alaska.
Well, I
you know?
would argue that the thing about Europe that is in some ways very different than America, there's a lot more traveling to a lot more places. So
That is true. That is true.
So yeah, I mean, you know, as an American, I didn't know Croatia was such a big thing for people to hit the beach. But our first sale, when we were selling a do-it-yourself sandal making kit in the beginning of December, was to a guy in Minnesota. So it's like,
Wow.
oh, he's going to go somewhere. So
Right,
we still
right.
sell a lot of summer products in the winter to cold areas. We just don't spend as much money advertising when we're doing that,
Yeah.
but because people are traveling.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you never know. This is the thing about advertising. The goal is test as quickly and cheaply as you can.
Yes, that's true. If you've got somebody on the ground to do a little bit of, you know, cultural, you know, I think as I said in the previous meeting, I said, you know, usually if you wanted to go for a specific market that has the closest connection to the US, I mean, you can't go wrong with Germany, simply because the amount of people. You still need to understand their culture. As you said, Stephen, the big boisterous, bold American advertising is not going to do you any favors with the Germans.
No.
But I think, you know, that's a close one.
I have to tell you, I got to give you this story. A friend of mine who's he's a German comic, And his opening line, he goes, before I get started, I want to clear up a misconception about Germans. Everyone thinks that we are mathematical and linear and logical and rational. It's a myth, okay? Okay, let's get started. Joke number one.
Yeah, I work with a lot of Germans, and that's very true. The only time they get like loose and silly is when you've got 5 or 6 beers in them.
Yeah, exactly.
But moving on to kind of expanding on what we were talking about, you know, are there any kind of lessons in your kind of, I'd say, European expansion that you could kind of, you know, pass on to smaller businesses that might not have this, you know, prior demand or prior awareness that you had?
I'll say that one of the, I don't know if this is a lesson, but it's something that has been very interesting for us, is that in America, small stores, of which there are many, are difficult to sell into, and I'm trying to think how to put this. Retail is still a really big thing in Europe. It's the best way I can put it. Small retail outlets still do really well. You'll find some little, 500 square foot shop that's doing a couple $1 million a year. It's like, what? Because there's still a culture of being downtown, walking around and shopping in these little stores, many of which have been there forever. It's not the same in the US. And that was a really interesting adjustment and something that's been very valuable. We have the opportunity to do mono-branded retail in Europe because it's just more familiar that here's the store for this brand, this product. And in the US, it's much harder to do that. You have to have a very different kind of demand to pull that off. And so that's been one of the biggest surprising things. The other one is simply, I mean, we knew that there was more people hip to this idea of natural movement in Europe for simple reasons. I mean, Birkenstock's been around for 250 years. Similar idea, we do it better, but we knew that the acceptance would be in many ways less have less friction, where we didn't have to convince people this was a valid type of footwear.
Right.
So that's really helpful, where we would see people willing to take bigger risk on an initial order, and then from little bits of data go, okay, we're onto something, and then fill in with a big order, right away. Here, people are running things by the numbers in a way that's very different. And, some stores we do really, really well, and we watch them under order for the next season, knowing that they're not going to have enough inventory, which is, it's just a very different mentality in the retail environment. And that's been fascinating and has worked to our advantage. Depending on the product, again, could be a very different thing. Footwear is different than surfboards, but that's been something that's been really cool. And there's a lot of opportunity that we're looking to. Let me back up and say this differently. There's so many things that we want to do that we know would be effective and it would work, but we don't have the capital to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that building on that, I think one thing that's an observation of mine in regards to Xero Shoes is that you as an individual have a very specific authority to be selling this particular type of product because of what you do and what you're known for.
True.
And I think I said this in the last meeting, is I think that is actually one of the things that is, from my perspective, a very strong position to have in European markets, is a position of authority and authenticity. The big bolsterous, it's fancy advertising, Super Bowl type of stuff doesn't really get you as far as being an authentic brand that actually has like a and the reason I bring that up is that it's one thing to be a CEO of a company that is a personal connection to what you're selling. It's harder to have that if you're just a serial entrepreneur,
Or just
so you're just really good at having
corporate
businesses.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I mean, there's more to it. I will say the superpower that I have, and I'm not coining that term, I'll tell you why I'm using it though, is that I did stand-up comedy for 10 years plus. And so I have no fear of just saying anything to anybody. And no one is ever going to stump me with something. And I say superpower, not because I see it that way, but my friends from my comedy era who've gone on to other careers, that's what they describe. They go, I'm in politics and I have a superpower of being a former stand-up because I will say things in a debate that no one knows where it came from. It's engaging in some way. I'm fearless about doing it. And the other person is my audience. They're stammering because I just got them off guard the same way I got the audience. So, for me, Xero Shoes is the perfect storm. I hate that phrase. It's the perfect combination of like everything I've ever done. And it just so happens that I've got a product where it changes people's lives and everything I say is the truth. That's a really rare combination in consumer products, to be able to tell the truth and change people's lives. And you put all that together with, again, for whatever reason, my fascination with finding ways of talking about these things and coming up with good metaphors and analogies to get people to understand stuff. It's just, it's very helpful. And the fact that I'm like the 20th fastest guy in America in my age group doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, on the one hand, it's what's helped us get here. It wasn't something I planned. In fact, it wasn't something I wanted. When I started the company, I wanted to stay as in the background as I could, because I was thinking, frankly, we'd sell it after 3 years and make a whole bunch of money and walk away. So I didn't want it to be linked to me. But our first videos, when we had a do-it-yourself sandal making kit, was me saying, "Hey, I'm Steven Sashen from Xero Shoes. Here's how you make the sandal." And then it's 10 minutes of videos of my feet. And people were recognizing me on the street. And I went, "Ah, shit, I got to go that way." So I know people relate to people, and I'm happy to do that. It is problematic in other ways. Again, I'm, the face of the company. And so if someone does acquire us at some point, what are they going to do with that? Now, I don't really care. If they don't think they need me, it's their company. I'm cool with that. If they want to use me, I don't want it to be a full-time job after it's not my, if I'm not responsible for the way things happen. So there's a bit of a, kind of push me, pull you conflict about that, but it's just the way it is. And I will say, though, to your point, and the other thing, like I've said, I can't keep a secret. So, and transparency is very important to Lena and I in our business. When things are going right or wrong, or whatever they are, we want to talk about it, and we want people to understand the reality of the business, so that one of the biggest things I try to do is make people realize it's a bunch of human beings here. So if you're having a problem and you call and start screaming and yelling, I've literally said to some people, "We're not going to give you the solution you want because you're screaming and yelling. If you want to call back and do this like a human being, more than happy to help. But this is not how you talk to another human being." Click.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about how bad you are on social media. Cool. Just send me the link so I can comment. What? Yeah, just send me the link. It's cool. I get it that you're upset. So it's a weird position to take. I think mostly because people are afraid, because when you are putting yourself in a weird situation. I mean, I am, I have my own podcast, because everyone has a podcast, of course, and I often say, if anyone can recommend someone who wants to be on my podcast who thinks I'm completely full of it, please tell them to contact me, because I have no problem talking to people who think I have my head completely up my butt, and let's see where the conversation goes. I don't know. If someone proves me wrong, I'm game. And I think that psychological problem that I have, that I'm willing to get into that conversation, is, paradoxically helpful.
Yeah. Do you think that, what I'm trying to work with, as trying to build some advice from
I've got to interrupt, because I just made myself a little nauseated. Please don't think that anything that I say or do about myself is in any way a guide for how any other human being should be. The real lesson here is figure out what you're comfortable doing and just do it. Because, like somebody once, way back when, internet friend of mine said, "Hey, we can spend a bunch of money and go hang out with Richard Branson on his island." I said, "Why in God's name would I want to do that?" He said, "What? Imagine what you could learn from Richard Branson." I said, "I already know what I could learn from Richard Branson." He said, "Oh yeah, what?" I said, "I'm not Richard Branson."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think the thing that is interesting about your particular situation, and what I find useful for businesses as they move into Europe as a kind of insight, is that you, because of your background, have been able to kind of find a marriage between your personal brand and your business brand. Whereas I think that, and that this is the same if you're a fitness influencer or whatnot, where your particular passion or whatnot as you sell yourself as an individual, as a personal brand, can also tie into building, you know, business for your actual business. But that
Yeah.
can't always be the case, I think, for some
Yeah, well, I
people.
mean, I understand what you're saying, but I don't see it that way because I don't really care about having a personal brand. It just so happens that it occurred that way, but that's never been a thought that I've had.
Mm.
When you brought a fitness influencer, that's a really tricky one because part of your personal brand requires you to be a certain way. You have to look a certain way. You have to be able to communicate that. Um, you, um, I know fitness influencers who, after some number of years, they just want to die because the the stress of it is very high of having to maintain that particular look, that particular sound, that particular whatever else. I'm lucky enough that I don't have that, nor do I care.
Right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I have no interest in look at my personal Facebook account. Look at the last time I posted something. I think it was a few
Mm.
years ago. I
Right.
just don't care.
Right.
It just happens that for whatever constellation of reasons, I can and I enjoy doing this stuff,
Mm.
but I have no, personal ulterior motive.
Yeah. I think that's wise advice, and I think that for businesses that are trying to move into Europe, I think that if they don't have uh, that prior awareness to their brand or their personal brand, um, finding some sort of way to build the authority of their brand in that particular country is a good way to
You know,
uh, but personally, I think that honestly, one of the things is that you want to, with the current situation, I think it's important to build an authority because coming out as an American company is not going to do you any favors right now. So,
yeah, but I'll tell you, here's a funny way that you can do it. If you come into a country and you know nothing about that country, your personal brand, if you're willing to do it, is to be
mm,
like go on the street and talk to people and confess your ignorance and and engage with them. I
yeah,
mean, it's basically tell the truth. If it's like, I don't know anything about where I am or what I'm doing, and I got this product, what do you recommend? I mean, like if you just did that with on the street, I
hmm,
guarantee that would just get a bajillion views because
sure,
the fundamental thing that people respond to, or one thing people respond to among many other, is again, any kind of authenticity. And especially if you're admitting you're a fish out of water, um, there's a great power in that. That's one of the movie themes that we relate to over and over and over is fish out of water. So don't try to be or pretend what you're not. Lean into the reality of your situation, and that's going to give you opportunities, and it'll evolve over time.
mm,
I mean, it's look, if I one of my fantasies is someone does buy us out, but they realize the smartest thing they could do is put Lane and I on the road, just give us a airfare, and we'll land places, and we'll spend 5 days there, and one of them will be with people that we'll talk about with for Xero Shoes. But it'll
mm,
be some things like, hey, let's go for a run. I go, yeah, I don't go for a run. What? I sprint, you run.
mm,
And then we have
yeah,
some wacky conversation about that.
yeah,
And but I would want to do it like, look, the most important thing about footwear, where do we walk to get some gelato? I mean, let's just have, make it as eh, don't try to live into or up to some idea of what you should do to make it work because that'll probably just come across as fake and obnoxious.
hmm. That's good. That's good advice. Very well said.
Oh, well, then that was an action
Uh,
word.
John, you had a question. Do you want to take that one?
Yes, I'm really enjoying this. Thank you so much. And I love that we've got such a incredible guest and co-host here. And this has kind of been my goal is for us as a family to be able to continue to keep our business going through all the challenges that we could ever imagine, which we've always had, but this is one that's pretty big, right?
Yeah.
There's two questions I have. There's another slide, but first I want to start on this because this is what's so inspiring. How many different countries are you selling Xero Shoes?
I don't
And
even
can you
know.
tell us?
I don't even know. We have sold to people in 104 countries. We
Yeah,
have, yeah, we have a retail presence in, oh man, I don't even know, 30 maybe. I mean, not
including China. You sell into China.
we were working with a company that was managing China for us, and they were trying to do it the way they thought it would work, and we were trying to tell them, chill out. So we found a good combination of what was working there with our version of what works there. But the problem is we realized that to make it really work, we needed to have like our European office in China. We needed to have a dozen people over there. And again, we just weren't in a position and still aren't in a position to make that happen. So we got it profitable, but it wasn't sustainable with where our business is at the moment.
Okay, well, now the next thing I'm interested in is the Zero Hero program. If you can share how you built that.
Oh boy. So it's basically, some of our top ambassador people, and we didn't build it. They just showed up. I mean, it was people who were like, hey, look what I'm doing, and you changed my life. How can I help? And we built that. Frankly, it's been dramatically neglected in part because people just who typically do affiliate and ambassador level marketing, the way they do it is not as it's not as good. Like I'll tell you one thing that we do. I call it the We Pay to Pay You program. And what it means is if you have a Facebook business account, and you post something and tag us as the sponsor of that post shows up as an ad in our ad manager. We will spend money to advertise that post. When people click on that, it's taking it back to your page. And if you're an affiliate of ours, when people respond to that post, then you're getting a commission off of the sales from new customers from that affiliate link. So we're paying to do the ad that pays you because you just drove some people to us because we drove people to you. So we're helping them build their personal brand while, it's just a conjoined thing. That takes a little bit of effort to manage. And again, right now, especially with what's going on, we just don't have all the resources to do everything that we were able to do when we were smaller. But, with our retail partners, same thing. I want to promote them. It's like, but you're stealing sales away from your DTC business. No, I'm giving sales to a company we're going to make their business better, and then they're going to want to work with us more. And it takes not a lot of time to be helpful to those people. I always want to find ways to be helpful to the people that are helping us. And there's a lot of ways of doing that online. So the Zero Hero program was part of that. And it is something that I'm having a lot of conversations, given what's going on right now, about what we need to do to really reanimate that, because it's one of the least expensive things we can do in a time where we have to be very attentive to expenses, to really build awareness and build attention. I mean, we're really lucky. We're in the NBA and WNBA now. We built a basketball shoe that people are playing in the playoffs with. And some of them are people we didn't even know they had the shoe. They just bought it and they're playing in it. Like, whoa. So, there's a lot of opportunities that we have now as a bigger company with bigger reach and more attention on us because of some of these products. So I've been pitching very hard to the appropriate human beings to let me get that restarted.
Thank you for sharing. So you do have a program for ambassadors. And have you ever, one of the things we're looking at with our brand, with Modern Shelving and Tandem Surf, is creating like co-branded websites, or
Yeah.
is that something you think is a good idea?
It's the right thing at the right time. So I can't give a blanket statement, but so like for our distributors, we want to do something similar. I mean, if they want to run their own website and they're on a different platform, we'll give them all the help we can to make it look like it's an organic site, like it's our site. But for the right kind of business, having something where you can basically, spin up a co-branded site or even a mono-branded site with their branding and your product is right on. Again, very business specific.
Thank you. Yeah, the next question I have, I think, ties to what you said.
Oh, wait, I got to back
you're
up.
facing.
The easiest
Yep.
way to I'm not sure if this is true or not. If you're running a WordPress multi-site instance, it's really easy to do that. Just FYI. I don't know about Shopify. I don't know about certainly not Magento and other platforms, but I know on Woo doing a multi-site version of Woo where you can literally just go click, 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 and everything's there, and all you're doing is updating certain variables. So if you're going to do that thing of co-branded or even mono-branded that you are managing or licensing, you want to make sure that you don't have to worry about them doing or saying something that will get you in trouble. you want to have control over that. So if it's not, click and manage, be warned.
Well, one of the things, so we have a platform with Social Snowball, and then there's a code
Sure.
creator that builds on top of that. So we're looking at even using that to pretty quickly be able to test out these other markets
Yeah,
for
good
us.
idea.
So
Yeah,
what's your
sadly,
thought on that?
sadly, they're Shopify. Otherwise, I like those guys, but they went, "Oh, you're a Woo shop." Well,
Okay, so you're a Woo shop, not a Shopify. That's
Yeah.
unusual. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, well, you
and
mentioned that.
FYI,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
only because I don't trust closed platforms. Because I've been doing this a long time. I've seen them come and go or change their terms or change something. And I don't believe in best practices. I don't believe that there's a way that everything should look and feel and function.
Do you mind sharing what percentage is D2C for you versus retail?
I would tell you if I knew off the top of my head. I can't share anything that isn't public information because we did an equity crowdfunding raise, and so I can only talk about things that we published publicly. And so, and the last thing we published was from the end of Q2 2024, and I don't remember what it said there. So, if we include third party internet sites like Amazon or Runner's Roost or Running Warehouse, things like that, I think it was around 80, but don't hold me to it. I'm making it up.
Thank you. Yeah, this is something that I want to touch on. It's very timely and kind of the elephant in the room for a lot of people, especially Shark Tankers that had a dream, got on Shark Tank, and set up manufacturing to scale. And you've shared, I think, at the beginning of this, that you're facing a multi-million-dollar tariff bill, the situation that many of us are grappling with, and along with all these changing policies. What advice would you give to founders dealing with these unexpected tariff liabilities?
Lock up the guns and change the combination. Work with your factories and suppliers to get as creative as you can to, I mean, again, every situation is going to be different. If you the best thing I can say is I can't imagine this is going to continue for the indefinite future. I also can't imagine, well, I don't want to get into a big political conversation. Just work out contingency plans for as many different weird scenarios as you can think of. And then know that you are probably going to get screwed to a certain degree. So for example, you'll bring something in after you figured out a way to do it at 145%. And then the day after you bring it in, they're going to drop the tariff to 20%, and you will have lost that money and you can't get it back. It's just the way it is. Get over it. So.
Yeah,
But I will add one other thing. When this happened 4 years ago, the biggest thing we did is we sent a bunch of emails and I did a bunch of videos saying, look, we're going to need your help because we just got hit with this then, I think it was like a $2 million bill. And I can't remember, it's a lot of money that we had to pay out of nowhere. And we don't want to raise prices if we can avoid it. And we don't have the money to pay this tariff. So we need your help. If we're going to raise prices, it's going to happen on the following date. Between now and then, you can get things before we make it more expensive. The more you help us out by taking advantage of that, the less likely we're gonna have to raise prices. So whatever you can do, we'd really appreciate it. And it did really, really well. Again, letting people in behind the curtain, and especially our customers, we have a very intimate relationship with them because we've helped them in many ways. And so that's the biggest thing that Lane and I are pushing for now is we just need to engage people honestly and make them know what we believe and what's true, which is they are part of this. We're here because of them and for them.
So you really have a loyal customer base. I mean, do you have any idea of how many customers you have globally?
I haven't checked that in a while. It's a few million.
Few million. Oh, amazing. And I mean, you're facing probably one of the biggest, from a Shark Tanker company, tariff bills, right? I mean,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, we are one of the bigger. I mean, in 2023, I'll tell that number. We were a $65 million company, and so that's one of the bigger companies, and we're manufacturing in China. So do the math.
if you were, let me ask this because this is something that we're looking at, and I just flew out to North Carolina and met this group of people from the Philippines. Okay,
Mm.
so they are in the furniture. With our shelving business, it was kind of seemed like it was meant to be, because basically we found people that are in that country. Have you how would you feel about advising me on whether that's a good country to even sell into, since we have a
I would never give advice about something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just a country thing. It's who your specific partner is and what they do or don't do. So there's way too many variables for me to give anything resembling advice. I don't have enough information. And even if I did, I would be loath to give you advice. What I would tell you is the only advice I'd like to give is know that the only thing you can control is risk, AKA how much money you're spending to test something. So a thing that I say to people on an almost daily basis, and sometimes many times in a day, is how quickly and cheaply can I find out if you have your head up your butt? Because if you do, I want to know fast, and I don't want to lose too much money in the process. And I say it that way also because I want to see how they react to it. Because in any business relationship, sometimes things go a little wacky, and if they can't handle that phrasing, then we're not going to have a good time. And the follow-up question is, if things don't go well, and I have here's the metrics that I need, what are you going to do about it? And if they say things like, well, we guarantee that it's going to, oh, you guarantee it? Well, we don't guarantee it. I said, well, then don't say that. They go, well, we're confident. I go, confident? I don't care how you feel. I want to know what you're going to do if I give you a bunch of money and I'm the first customer you've had in your entire career where your thing doesn't work. What are you going to do? Because I don't want you to say, sorry, that, it didn't work, but thanks for putting my kid through college. And if they can't answer those questions, I typically don't work with them.
amazing.
Yeah,
Thank
the
you
only
for
thing we
sharing.
control, the only thing we can control is risk. Everything else is a
Mhm.
crapshoot.
Amazing. Yes.
Excellent. Do you have more questions, John?
Well, I want to make sure other people are on here as well. I
Yeah.
know Hank had asked some questions, Juju or Dave. If there's
I
anyone
don't
else
have
with
myself,
questions.
so I maybe we should just open the floor.
Mhm. Yeah, so right now, Steven, where are you located?
In Colorado, between Boulder and Denver.
And you've successfully, I mean, after you got on Shark Tank, you didn't get a deal, right? Have you had an update?
We turned down an offer from Kevin. We were asking for 400 grand for 8%. He said he'd give us the 400 for 50%. I said, how about 10%? He said, you're crazy. I went, yeah, maybe. And we haven't had an update. CNBC has rebroadcast our episode many, many times, and they had a series they called Shark Tank Misses, and we were the first one they featured. And I talked to the producer of the show, talked to Clay on a semi-regular basis, pitching that he should do an update for us. And because what we learned by preparing to be on the show and by getting rejected by 4 of the 5 people on the show for various reasons, that's what led us to make the decisions that got us to where we are now. So being on the show is what changed our lives and changed our business. And I keep telling him it's a really good story. And since we're, one of the most successful companies, what the hell? I will tell you a private, well, it's not private. Yeah, it's private, but it's fun. I emailed him a little while ago and said, what do you think about this? Sharks, we're offering 100% of our company for $150 million. And he emailed me back almost immediately and said, wow, I mean, I like the idea, but I don't want to take the show in that direction. And I said, yeah, I get it.
That's amazing. So Clay is the executive producer. So he and his wife actually worked together
Yeah.
on producing this show.
Yeah.
And what season were you on originally?
4.
You were on season 4, so that was still the early days. And you and your wife came on and pitched. And how far along were you with the business at the time?
2.5 years. We had done like 500 grand the year before. And, so 12 years later, 65 million.
That's crazy.
Amazing. It's
Yeah,
so
that's very crazy.
inspiring, and
It's a
working with
start.
your wife, Manya and I and our 3 daughters pitched the Shark Tank, and Juju who's on here. I'm not sure if she's going to come on and say hello. She hopped on when you were before you came on, but we definitely aspire, I think, during these challenging times to take our Shark Tank brand global. I guess, would you have any advice? Because have you done licensing? Because we secured a deal with Margaritaville.
No, we haven't. Not because people haven't asked, but because they don't understand how that really works. And, we're not a big enough brand where it makes sense for, well, depends. There's a lot of variables that go into that one too. Like who the licensing partner is, what they're going to do. I mean, let's make it up. Some famous athlete says, hey, you can put my name on your shoe. Cool. What are you going to do about it? Because if it's just us, that's not fun. And, and we've had some people where they want to do a co-branded thing, and I go, yeah, but who's going to pay for it? Because if it's just us selling it on our website, then we're putting up all the cash and you're getting the benefit. But I mean, no. What's your marketing plan? What's your distribution plan? What's your strategic plan? Because it's your shoe. And if they don't have that, we don't do it. I mean, we've had that a number of times where it's like, I just want to make, a purple shoe with my face on it. Cool. Well, it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to make that. Oh, but I thought you were, no. Well, people don't know who you are. So it's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I mean, we are doing, look, now that we're NBA and WNBA, we're not doing licensing or even co-branded, but we are doing special colorways for people who are, doing well, because that's really fun. And at some point we may have a shoe with someone's name on it. I don't know.
But right now, you haven't had a shoe with anyone's name on it. You haven't done any.
We've done close. The book Born to Run is one of the things that catalyzed this whole barefoot movement, natural movement, barefoot running thing. And the author Chris McDougall and his training partner Eric Orton, they put out Born to Run 2, and they emailed me and said, send us some shoes and we'll see if we can put them in the book. And they said, oh my God, we've never actually liked any of these barefoot shoes before. We love yours. Let's do something together. So we did that because it's the perfect fit for us. And we sell them and they sell them. But it's a different situation because, in this weird little world, they're famous. So people who don't know don't care. Some people just like the colorway. So, that's something that we enjoy doing with them. And the fact that everyone in our little space, it's not really that little, everyone that's in our category references that book. And every time they do, they're advertising for us.
I got a question. Did you deal with any kind of patent infringement? I know that we used to work we worked with a couple companies. I think it was Vibram and Topo Athletic.
Oop, you just froze.
Mentioning what's that?
Oh, you froze for a second. You worked with Vibram and Topo, and P.S. both friends of mine. Tony Post, dear friend. The guys at Vibram were dear friends. So, but in what context were you working with them?
So Tony, we managed Tony's trade show exhibit for a while.
Oh, that is a killer booth, man.
I don't know which one you talk.
Well, the one that I see every year, that I mean, the big white giant thing that he's had for the last 8 years.
Yeah, no, we did some other ones when they cut back their program for a while. I know which one you're talking about as well. It was done right out in
okay, never mind. That thing's a piece of crap, and I only like your stuff that I haven't seen.
No, I liked it. No, it was great. It was great. I mean, we worked with them, but on a smaller scale when they were doing just more regional stuff.
Got it.
But I remember they talked a lot about the open toe box, and I thought that they had a lot of patents on it. Maybe it was just design patents or something. But
footwear patents are tricky. You can have design patents that can be effective and design patents that aren't. Footwear patents are very easy to get around. I'll give you a couple of stories. Another one of the sandal companies, they had a sandal. I came up to them at the trade show and I said, I know you're going to think I'm a complete ass when I say this, but you're infringing on my design patent. And they got all mad. I said, no, you have to understand, I'm trying to keep a federal judge from putting you out of business. And I'm not going to tell you what the patent is. I'm going to say, go look at your shoe and then go over to our booth and look at ours and see if you can find similarities. And if you can, that's the thing that you're stepping on. And I know you're going to think I'm a complete, horrible human being. But again, I'm trying to keep you in business. And 2 days later, they called and went, wow, thank you. I said, that's the right use of a design patent. Utility patent, here's my favorite story. I think I'm allowed to tell this. We saw a video that came across our lives from someone saying, here's this cute little strappy sandal that you can buy from Miu Miu for $895. Or you can go to Free People and buy a version from Xero Shoes that looks pretty much identical for $49. Well, I had a utility patent on the lacing system. So we had a settlement. It was not, a new Mercedes, but because we couldn't prove damages, because no one was not buying our $50 product to buy a $900 product. So it was just that they were infringing. And we have there are a couple other patents we had, both utility and design, where we've had to approach people and go, yeah, you can't do that. And the annoying part about patents, of course, is that if you don't aggressively pursue people who are infringing, then you lose the patent, because people say, well, then if you don't care, then you're not protecting it, so it goes bye-bye. So yeah, the amount of money we spend on IP is way more than I ever imagined.
I'll tell you,
Why
one
do
of the things that we've had some success with battling IP is, and I don't know if anyone who saw my airing on Shark Tank, I talked about it, and even Lori and Damon were like, "What are you talking about?" We've been getting federally issued TROs, restraining orders. So we have like hundreds of knockoffs on Amazon, and so we get a federally issued restraining order. We take that to Amazon because we're in the same marketplace, and Amazon just shuts them all down immediately and
Oh, I
forces them
wish.
to come to the table with us.
Oh, I wish. We have, I mean, we don't have a patent on, and we do have some design patents, but we don't have utility. But we have some Amazon ripoffs. I mean, I'm perversely proud of it. It's like we've gotten to the point that people are ripping us off. It's like, oh, cool, we made it. But there are a few that are, I mean, instead of Xero Shoes, they're Xero Land, and they just took my logo and rotated it 15 degrees. And Amazon, even with brand registry, they are really dragging their heels about doing anything about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying is I know that a lot of people struggle with brand registry and the Apex program and all this and that, but federally issued restraining order forces it's like it just takes it out of their park. It doesn't.
But you have the IP. We don't have. There's no IP to protect some of these things. There's trademarks, but again, they've kind of gotten around. But for the product itself, the products they've ripped off are not the ones where we have patent protection. I mean, here's a weird thing. Hold on, let me find a good shoe. This lacing system with this inverted V thing and this heel strap thing, we didn't patent it when I came up with it because we didn't have the money, frankly, and we didn't think that was a thing. There's only one company. Well, these people now who are ripping us off, if we had had that, we could have shut them down. But footwear, again, if someone changed the angle a little bit, if they move it a little bit forward, or they change the angle, there are people who would argue that it's not actually an infringement. So footwear is a horrible, horrible business.
Now, do you deal with trade dress?
Yeah. Again, wait, I'm going to back up. Here's my favorite one that's going on now. There's a guy who I think is in China who is making fake Xero Shoes websites and putting them locally and just counting on Google local search. And he's just stealing credit card data. And he's got a system where he'll make a template and just go click, click, click. He's hiding behind Cloudflare, and he's using a black hat friendly hosting company, and he's using a registrar that is also a black hat registrar. And so he's able to do this for pennies and just, steals credit card data. And we're shutting them down as fast as he can build them. But it's just like, it's the world's worst game of whack-a-mole. We're spending like $100,000 a year just to deal with the fact that he's doing this. I mean, yeah, trade dress is a little also
that's
tricky in footwear.
So I mean that's just blatant infringement.
Yeah, but
That's
all those
bad.
black hat companies don't care.
Right.
Let me ask you this question, because we're looking at, we have our manufacturing partner, which we've been working with over 20 years in China for our modern shelving company. Right now, we've got 2 containers. They're just sitting there, waiting for things to change. And we're looking at ways to, partner with them with entering markets that we're not going to have these tariffs.
Yeah.
I mean, would you question whether or not we can trust that we teach them how to sell and have them work with us? Or maybe there's a way we can have some agreements in place that would protect us.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, we're in a really lucky situation where with the way people respond to the product. And so, I mean, we have fired as many people as we've hired as reps, as resellers, as whatever else, because you just never know. But I mean, we all know this. No one cares about what you're doing as much as you do. And no matter how much they love you. And frankly, if you found someone who loved you because you were paying them a huge amount of money, the next thing you'd be doing is finding a way to pay them less money because you overestimated. So, I don't know. I mean, fundamentally, what you're asking is a hiring question, and there's no one on the planet who's ever figured out a solution for hiring properly. Whole lot of books, they don't work.
But no, but you went from, you pitched Shark Tank and you had some, basically is the United States still your primary market, or how did you go global?
Again, it was all just inbound. People like telling us we had to do it, and we knew that there was an opportunity. We've been look. One of my lines is all companies rise to the level of their neuroses of their founder. And Lane and I have different psychology, but mine is if there's an opportunity, I want to take it. And so my creative process, if you will, I come up with a lot of ideas. I'm not good at prioritizing. I'm not good at, if someone says, give me your top 3, I'm going to hand them 20 because I can't give them 3. It doesn't work in my brain that way. So when these opportunities show up, I want to take them all because you never know. Lane is like, we can't do that because we don't have a trademark there and they could own our company. It's like, oh shit. So, so you're asking a question to someone who thinks about the world very, very differently. So I would never try to tell you, even if I had an answer, I wouldn't give it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I like the fact that you bring Lena into it. It reminds me of how it is with Mandy and I have so many ideas. I have like a different idea every 10 seconds, and then she's the realist.
Yeah,
on that.
there's a guy that I knew who had a company. They made wedding favors, and they had a big sign in their company. And pardon the language, but I'm quoting. Not that I don't use this language anyway, but may as well give the caveat. Big sign that said, "The last thing we need is another good fucking idea."
Being from Boston, that's how we'd say it, right, Eric?
Yeah, the wicked smart sign.
My sentiments exactly, because that is exactly what John does all the time.
I
have
got
to
no
realize.
shortage of fucking
Well,
ideas.
hold on. The whole thing was Xero Shoes. When I came up with this idea, when I presented it to Lena, that was basically what she said. The last thing we need from you is another idea. And she didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
amazing.
So we have this one last question from Hank here. You can see on the screen. Do you have some insights to those?
So my litigation team, they'd be able to tell you more specifically because there are certain federal judges that are, really pro this in certain districts. I mean, the fact that it's being sold on Amazon, you can pretty much go to a federal judge in any district, but you want to find the ones that are, that really respond to this.
Well, sorry, go ahead. I mean, well, let me interrupt. The biggest thing that we've been trying to do, frankly, is just identify who's manufacturing this stuff. And we do have people on the ground in various places trying to track that down. And because I mean, what we've seen again, even on the manufacturing side, even dealing with trade dress and all the rest, it's just whack-a-mole. And it's relatively easy for someone to come up with something that's close enough that people can't tell the difference.
Yeah, the thing that we were finding, the same with us. I mean, most of our products and all the knockoffs look very similar, and they're all like, XQJY Corp, some corporation with a mailbox, PO box in California, which is held by a Chinese lawyer. So there's no way to even sue them or go after them.
Yeah.
But this restraining order, that it seizes their account, pretty much just shuts them down. They can't do anything on Amazon until they come to the table with us. So it was pretty much like, holding their feet to the fire. And Hank, if you want, my email is Eric with a K at riverbendresources.com. And if you want to shoot me an email, I'll just introduce you to my litigation team because we really went after 100 at a time. Half of them just they settled right on the spot and disappeared. About 25% of them contested, and some of them even banded together. We were like, hey, there were 10 of them that were like, hey, 10 different manufacturers got together and said, hey, if we each kick in 10 grand, we can battle this American and maybe even contest his patents and everything. So we released about 25% of them, of the defendants from the claim, just because we didn't want them contesting our patents, getting into a whole lot of that. And then 25% of them defaulted. So we went through that process once already, and we just started it again. This time we have, because the judges are starting to get a little more frustrated, like, okay, all 100 are the same, because maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of them are, not really infringers, or it could be this and that. So, and they just don't want to see these massive claims with like 100 people. So
Yeah.
I think the one that we just did had like 50 something on it. And then we're going to do another one with like 30 on it. But I mean, I have tons of them, tons. They've done millions in sales, killed me right
It-
out of the bat.
I mean, we also just have some rogue sellers who like, bought a bunch of stuff from a distributor and then they're selling. And, again, we're playing whack-a-mole with those too. I mean, that's a brand registry thing. And again, dragging their heels. And Frank, on Amazon, we're working with a company called Orva, and they're the #1 footwear seller on Amazon and Zappos. And they have a lot of muscle behind them, and even they're having a hard time. It's again, this is a horrible, horrible industry.
It's crazy. I actually saw a colleague um, at a recent trade show, and he had a product that is you got a utility patent. He's brand registered, Apex program, the whole thing. And I had actually bought his product. It's like an egg cleaner thing, and I had bought a knockoff. And I'm sitting at I was working the trade show, and I had the booth next to him. We were just talking about this same conversation, and I looked at him. I said, "Dude, I'm sorry." I said, "I actually bought a knockoff." And I said, I didn't know. And he's like, I know. And I said, I'm going to buy it right now. So I opened up Amazon, buy his product, and I'm buying it. And he goes, no, 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 stop. They actually, all the knockoffs were using his images, his name, his everything. And so they bundled them all together under one post. And you can see other sellers even though there were his pictures, his everything, he was like, "Oh, if you want to buy mine, you have to go on this one, go to other sellers, pick the most expensive one. That's us." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "I can't get rid of them. They're literally using his name, his store, his pictures, his everything, and Amazon's not doing anything."
This is semi-tangential. I don't remember which one's first, so I might get these upside down. But there's two identical products, Slanket and Snuggie. And I know the guy who invented the first one, and the other one ripped him off. And that was the one that they did, way more television advertising. And he can't he just can't even convince people. It's like, no, I invented that. No, 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 I bought this one over here. It's like, no, oh God, you know, it's crazy. I have a weird version of that in my own life. My first company, I invented what became the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers. And interestingly, in the 35 years since I did that, none of the other companies have been able to replicate what I did. They've done their best to copy it, but they can't do it the right way. And one guy who came close said in public, "Oh yeah, I completely ripped you off. It's just not illegal." It's like, okay, well played.
Everyone, I have to go. It's been a lovely conversation. It's past midnight over here in Denmark, so
Oh, stop your whining. Hey, by the
Actually,
way,
I
I
just
know, right?
wait,
I
wait,
know, right?
wait,
Yeah.
Jeffrey, we're gonna
Yeah.
we're gonna be in Denmark in a little more than a month.
Oh, you
Um,
should just hit me up. We'll take you around. Been here
where
for
are you?
17
Where
years.
exactly are you?
I'm about 20 miles outside the city in a town called Roskilde.
Okay, we're going up to, some little Airbnb on the coast, and then we're going to Copenhagen.
I mean, you can drive across the country in 4 hours.
I know.
Yes.
Well, we're coming from Germany, so we're doing that.
Yeah.
But no, I'll drop me a note to remind me, and I'll ping you, and yeah, it'll be a blast to get together if we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Before I go, I do have one, like you said, you don't need another idea, but I'm going to give you one anyway.
Good.
There is a niche market that I'm a skateboarder. I've been skateboarding since 1989. I'm an old guy, so I don't skate nearly as well as I used to. But the thing is, there is no shoes on the market, wide toe box for that
So
particular.
here's the glitch in the matrix there. In the early days, there's a company in the US called Xero, Zero Skateboards,
Yeah, I
and
know.
they filed to have our trademark removed, rescinded, whatever the hell it is.
Really?
And so, yeah, so thinking then, because we were just making sandals, that we would never get into something that would be relevant for skateboarding. We have some agreement with them that
Yeah.
we weren't gonna pursue skateboarding aggressively. There's a very specific thing, like we're not gonna go after skateboarding stores.
Yeah.
We're at the point where we're trying to decide if we want to just see if we get our wrist slapped if we go for it.
Mm.
And we don't know
Well,
yet.
you'd certainly have a customer in me. I mean,
Well,
I have
we
a
have
pair
a,
of
we
your
have a,
walking around
we-
shoes, but I just like,
we got a
they're
couple
different.
we have a couple things that are close. I mean, the Dylan slip-on is close, the Aptos is close. Um, they're sort of Vans-esque, if you will. But it's an interesting conversation. Okay, if you want to have fun, just go to xeroshoes.com/feedback and say, here's what I'm looking for. And that gets to the product team. And I will
Yeah.
have that conversation it's a conversation that's come up quite a bit in the last couple of years.
It's a niche market that no
Yeah.
one's touching. And
But it's a
you know,
really,
and I
it's a
think
really good
there's a
one.
lot of money in skate shoes
Well,
now, like Nike
Well,
and all the other big brands.
I knew a
are in
guy
it.
who started a skateboarding footwear brand, and his entire marketing strategy was he had two video crews that just went out to Santa Monica every day and just filmed guys
Yeah.
that were wearing his shoes. That was it. He got to about $100 million in 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I did business with Red Bull years ago, and
Yeah.
you know, if you guys all know Red Bull, right? But they're located in Salzburg, Austria, and you go there, and all the guys go ride their motorbikes at lunch. Like it's the biggest collection of bros you'll ever meet, you know, and they run this gigantic multi-billion-dollar company, and they just do whatever. And you know, arguably their marketing is some of the most fantastic because they don't really do marketing; they just do
Well,
stunts.
well, they are a marketing company. They are not
Yeah.
a product company. I
No,
mean,
no. I don't. I mean, it's kind of a shame when you see that the people that they do all these things have to drink a Red Bull. Which you know, you see these people who are like elite athletes, and you're like, God, I don't want this in my system.
No,
But you know,
I vaguely remember doing a commercial for some pizza chain way back
yeah,
when, and it was like this, like, mm.
yeah.
A lot of that.
I have a
Hey,
friend
Jeff,
here
before,
who's oh yeah, go ahead,
no,
Eric.
I thought you were jumping off, and I was gonna say before you jump off, I was just gonna do a little. I know you're in marketing. I actually just came from a trade show in Copenhagen,
Oh,
and
really?
for those people there that are trying to go, to Europe, we do a lot of trade. We do trade shows over in Europe as well.
Yeah,
I lived in
I think
Germany for a while, so I understand how the market over there, and I know that this is about global. I know I first introduced myself as having a trade show company, which most people think are just U.S. specific. We're one of those unicorns that do trade shows both here in the U.S. and Europe. For anyone
I mean,
interested.
well, we should have that conversation. I mean, obviously not surprising we're at ISPO every year. I don't remember if we own anything or if we're renting something, but drop me a note. Wait,
I love
yeah,
the connections, guys. I mean, thanks so
yeah,
much, Jeffrey, for stepping
yeah,
up
and
to host this, and
yeah, no problem. Thanks
especially
for
during
asking me.
doing the time difference, and for Steven for scheduling this, Eric, everybody that's come on today. We basically gonna save this and share it. We're trying to build a community of people that are thinking globally, and understanding how they can scale beyond just even if they're on Shark Tank or not. But I love the fact that you shared how you turned down a Shark Tank deal, Stephen. It just wasn't right. You've gone on to
wasn't a
build
good deal.
this into a
Bad deal.
global multi-billion-dollar brand.
Well, do keep in mind that if anything I said seems in any way useful, you totally misunderstood me.
Well, before we close, is
Well
there any
said.
last piece of advice that you'd share with founders that are trying to stay nimble and authentic?
Yeah, get a government job with a pension.
I'm not sure a
This isn't
government job is the right way to go right now.
Yeah, well, if that ever becomes a viable option again, yeah, my brother-in-law has a government job, but it's one where they're leaving people alone right now. He's in the CIA, and not a whole lot of turmoil happening there. But it might actually affect his pension. I mean, they're doing some very underhanded things, like the way your pension works now is they take the last 3 years of your employment and whatever the average of your salary was, that's kind of what they give you. Now they're moving it to 5 years, where you clearly were making less money 5 years ago. It's like, come on, man. So I mean, they are stepping over dollars to pick up pennies with some of the things they're doing.
I think it's definitely in the service of making the rich richer and really trying to attack the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. It's a
I
big bummer.
I would agree with that.